Hello and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be having a look at project failure and how to avoid it. So welcome along. So just as people finish joining, just to let you know that you're attendee listen only mode. And if you have any questions at all, we have a chat box. So please put your questions in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them as they go along. So a little bit about me. Well, I'm running a series of expert webinars with some really great people with fantastic expertise. And today we've got Rob Pendleton that's joining. So if we kick off. Right, so as we start, I'm going to share my screen with you so you can have a look as well at the slides as we go. Fabulous. Okay, so that's today's talk. We're going to have a look at project failure, as I said, and best ways to avoid it. Now, it's really important because when you're doing a project, you want to investing a lot of time and resource into that. So you want to make sure that you're actually getting the best that you can from what you're doing. Now, that's me. Now, I set up my business because I want to be able to empower individuals to affect their own improvements within their organisations. When you're getting an external consultant in, sometimes it's difficult to get time to get that transfer of knowledge across to the business. Businesses sometimes don't understand the technical language that goes on. So I'm actually working and coaching with individuals within businesses to be able to affect their own improvements. So once they know the tools and techniques, they can actually be able to redo that within their organisation. And it all comes back to whether you think you can or think you can't. Either way, you're right. So I'm helping you to think that you can do something and you can make your organisation a herd leader within the market that you're operating. So as I said earlier, I'm running a Talk to the Expert series. So today we're having a look at project and program and transformational change. Next month, we're looking at effective leadership and why those leadership skills are really important. Managing human resources, that's obviously a lot of issues with auto-enrollment and things, and actually making sure that you have all the tools and techniques in place to be able to manage your staff. Business architecture for small businesses. Now that's really important. You think of business architecture as for large organizations, large corporations, designing the structure, but that's equally as important for small organizations as well. And when you join me on that webinar, you'll find out why. And lastly, social media is such a big thing these days. You know, technology has changed the way that businesses operate, and being able to get your message out there and to get people following you and, you know, driving traffic to your website and engaging with people so you get that authority and that social proof is really, really key. So we're going to have a webinar on that, and I'm joined by somebody from Tin Digital to present that to you. So in terms of what I look at, now business structure is really important, the way you're designed to be able to effectively meet what your customers want. And that's what we want, isn't it? We want to add value to everything that we do in order, you know, to get the customer to have the best experience, to help build your reputation. So that includes all your processes and activities and things that you do. And you need to get the right business thinking behind that, because you can put all the processes and the structure in place, but if you aren't engaging or communicating or helping people deal with that change, then, you know, you've got a bit of a problem. It doesn't work as well as you might like. So in order to get that change, we're talking about projects, really. We're talking about how we plan what we need to do, how we plan to get from where we are now to where we want to be. And that planning is really, really key, because, you know, doing a period of transformation can be expensive, even for a small business. And, you know, it's about making sure that your quality, your cost, and within time, and knowing what the pitfalls to avoid are. So this is what Rob's going to be helping us with that today. So before we start off, we're going to do a quick poll. I want to have a look at whether your organisation is working on any transformation projects at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to start the poll off. There we go. So if you'd like to have a vote on that, is your organisation working on it? So that can be anything from small projects or big mergers, acquisitions, whether you've got any big restructures coming on, whether you're looking at doing new processes or new IT systems. That would be great. Okay, so what we're going to do today as well is that we're going to have a look through a scenario. We're going to bring this subject into something in a way that hopefully you'll be able to really engage with. So this is how we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be dealing with Rob. Nice to see you, Rob.
Hi there. Good morning.
And Rob has been working, he's got a 15-year track record of helping public and private sector clients. So he's got tons of experience. He's worked on multi-million-pound projects, large time-critical projects, but also small projects as well, which is really great for small businesses. Now, that experience covers the retail, IT, manufacturing, financial services, insurance, media, logistics, health, and government, about everybody, really, I think. So that's fantastic. So I'll quickly, yeah, you certainly have. So we'll quickly have a look. So, I mean, these are some of the organisations that, that Rob has been dealing with. So we've got like your Tesco, your Cadbury's, Marks and Spencer. So we're talking about big organisations who are expecting good quality resources when they hire somebody. So that's great. Okay, so our fictional company today, we're going to have an organisation called Meals to Dine For. Now, this is your company. Now, you set it up. So I want you to forget who you work for at the moment. This is, as far as you're concerned, Meals to Dine For is your organisation. You set it up 10 years ago. Now, you employ staff. You've got a kitchen manager. You have kitchen staff. You have office staff. And you have some drivers. And your whole business is around being able to provide some really high quality meals for people in your local families in your local area. So your ideal avatar, your ideal client would be two parents that both work full time, that have two children, that have busy social lives. So they're out all the time doing clubs and going to different groups and things. So mum and dad don't really have the time to cook. So you're fulfilling that need by providing really, really good quality food. So they can purchase from you just the main meal a day. They can purchase 3 courses. You can do dinner parties. You supply food 7 days a week and you do 363 days a year. So you don't do Christmas Day and Boxing Day. But other than that, you're open. But your found business is growing so much, it's been fantastic, and you're looking to open up a new kitchen, new premises just a short distance away, because you're finding when you're delivering your food, you can only travel so far by keeping the meals hot. So you're having to open a new kitchen in order to be able to service a wider area. So this is a really exciting project for you. But you only got 60,000 and you've managed to get that capital. But you haven't got any more. That is your absolute limit. And you kind of know what you want. You know, it's got to cover your lease, it's got to cover your kitchen equipment and your new staff. And it's really exciting. But the one thing you're a little bit worried about is, you know, you can't afford it to go over budget. You can't afford it to go over time. You need it to be available coming up to the, you know, Christmas, summer period or whatever it is where business really takes off for you. So everything is really critical that you get it right. So Rob, can you take us through a few of the things that we're going to have a look at to help Meals to Dine For?
Yeah, sure. Before I launch into it, I'll just say good morning to everyone. And I wanted to just say about Debbie's initiative that I'm really impressed and pleased to hear that somebody's doing some coaching and some helping for smaller businesses. I know that as a consultant who's worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, the sorts of rates that we would charge are just unrealistic for smaller businesses. And I think also completely unnecessary for smaller businesses, because part of what makes good project planning, good program management and good transformation is about stepping up and taking responsibility for doing it yourself. Though many people will find that they're very good at doing what they do, but they have less experience of changing what they do. And what Debbie's offering to people is an opportunity here to get access to some of the learning points that people who handle change throughout their lives learn over the years and bring that into a format that will allow people like you who run your own businesses, run your own organizations, and work within smaller organizations, to deploy that knowledge and that learning for your own projects. And you've got a much better chance of success with a little bit of knowledge and an awful lot of personal investment in the problem than you have actually if you outsource that and look to just spend a lot of money on it. So really pleased to be involved with this. Coming to the slides, I have found over the years that just a horrendous amount of projects that get started fail. And there was a famous study done by McKinsey & Co., one of the biggest names in strategy consulting, that said that as many as 70% of all transformation projects ever started have failed by the terms they set for themselves up front. Now, that's a horrible statistic, and it doesn't speak very well of the quality of the consulting and the support that has been out there in the past. And I think there are four main areas where people consistently get it wrong that drive these failures. The first of these is having unreasonable aspirations for the project. If you've got a certain amount of money and a certain number of people involved, and those people have a certain level of skill and understanding, then you need to set aspirations for the project that accurately reflect that. If you reach for the stars continuously, you will often find that you miss. But if you set reasonable expectations and have reasonable aspirations for your project, you're a much more solid footing. The second thing is around planning and control of the project. I think there are two ways you see this one go. One is that people get absolutely obsessed by good planning and firm control, and they almost plan their project out of existence. They find that they're spending more time planning than actually doing, or they're spending more money on planning than they are on doing, and that's clearly out of balance. The other side of that is the group who go totally the other way, and they spend all of their time frantically doing things, but spending not enough time planning and controlling what they do. And they end up spending all of their money very fast and not achieving all of the objectives that they've set out for themselves. The third main area where you see things just go horribly wrong is where there's a lack of flexibility or responsiveness about how the project is managed. Now, it can be quite often that a transformation will take 6 months, 12 months, even 2 years. And actually, the world changes a tremendous amount within a 2-year time frame. And so what you need to be aware of is are your eyes not only down managing your problem, but up looking at the rest of the world while you do so? Let's just say a new competitor enters the space or something like that happens. If you don't notice that and redeploy your money to the most effective way now, because you're too robustly sticking to your plan, you've not been responsive, and that's another cause of failure. And then the final one to highlight in this sort of upfront summary is about failures of engagement, accountability, and adoption. Now, those are very buzzwordy project management words. Engagement is about talking to the people who matter. If you're not talking to the people who matter within your project management time, then you're not really going to inspire them about the end results of the project. You're not going to be able to get all the people who you need to be accountable for it, the people who are going to stand by you and say this is a good idea, to be accountable, because they don't understand what it is they're trying to deliver or why it's necessary. And finally, the other group who you absolutely have to convince that it's worth doing is anybody who's going to use the solution, who's going to use your transformation's end result. And that's about how they adopt that solution. So adoption is about do the staff who are going to use the end result of your change understand why you're going through it and what the benefits are. So in the context of our kitchen, we're going to now look at 4 more slides which go through each one of these four in detail to just explain how it works in context. If while I'm doing this you have any questions, feel free to pop them on the chat window, and Debbie will read those out to me so that I can address them as we go. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking you through. So, unreasonable aspirations. When you're trying to determine what you need to do on a project, the first thing you need to do is set the vision and understand why, what is it you're trying to achieve with the project that you're setting out. In the context of the kitchen and the new kitchen, we heard from Debbie that there's some potential issues around volume. They might not be able to service all the customers that they're getting, or they might not be able to service them efficiently. And that's probably costing them money. So part of the vision is about trying to make their operation more efficient and more effective at delivering for more customers. Another issue they said was around the how many locations they could serve. And so perhaps if they're looking to have two kitchens, a new one and an old one, and they could split their geographies of service and look to serve different areas from different kitchens. Once you've understood the broad aim of what you'd like to be, so you've probably written down, and the simplest way of doing this is to literally write down, in 1 year's time or in 2 years' time, some suitable time frame, we will be a company that is like this, and just state all of those things. That's a simple way of defining your vision.
And actually, there's quite a good thing coming up, because we're talking about designing your goals and what you really want. I've actually got a webinar coming up at the end of this month about that, because we've got the left and right hand sides of our brain, and actually we think differently. So it's about Rob's absolutely right about writing down what you want in your time frames, but actually you can do it in a pictorial way as well, which actually helps your subconscious to work. And it's about, so many people I see don't actually write down their goals, or don't really know what they want. And that's really, as Rob said, it's absolutely key to understanding with your kitchen, with your £60,000, what is it that you absolutely want to get and achieve, and how many people do you want to serve, and what time frames, and what bits of kit do you want in there, and how do you want it to work?
Yeah. And I think the critical elements for the vision is about analysing it from, how do I want it to work for my customers? How do I want it to work for my staff? And how do I want it to work for me? So as long as, make sure you're thinking nice and broad when you're setting that vision. And then determining scope is about saying, okay, so what sorts of things are we going to be able to change to move us from where we are now to where we need to be in that vision? How do we move from what would be described in project management terms as is state to be state? And that's how you look at the scope of your transformation. These are the things that we're going to need to change in order to get there.
So are we talking about the change in shape in their organisation and how it looks? Is that what we're saying, Rob?
Yep. So if the 2B kitchen has 15 stations where the previous one had 8, what will those 15 stations be dedicated to? And how are we going to equip each of those? Those are sort of broad elements of scope. So the next thing to look at is around business cases. Now, a good illustrator of a business case, let's say in the kitchen context, let's say there's a new mixer on the market, and it's amazing. It services 3 times the amount of volume that your existing mixer is able to do, and that mixer costs £3,500. When you're doing a business case to decide on that, what you need to work out is currently what's the utilization of your current mixer? Are you able to serve the volume of customers you're planning to have in 2 years' time or 1 year's time in your vision with that mixer? If you can't, maybe you've just got to replace it. Or maybe you could have that one plus another one of the same rather than having two. And if the difference in cost is it's only £1,000 for the for a small new mixer, maybe it doesn't make sense based on your volume to buy the large one. Another thing to always look at when you're doing business cases is about the opportunity cost of the money that you have. Now, what I mean by that is if you spend £3,500 of your £60,000 budget on the mixer, what do you have to sacrifice in order to do that? If you could spend £1,000 on a small mixer and still solve your problem, you've saved £2,500. Now, what does that £2,500 buy you in other opportunities? And that's really the nuts and bolts of business casing. I think that there's more to it than that, and I'm sure that Debbie, I think I'm right in saying you've got some courses that are dedicated to business casing and an investment appraisal. Is that right?
That's right, I have, and I'll be launching those in a few months' time. So keep a lookout for those. Thank you, Rob.
So it's really about balancing what am I going to spend and what does that give me in terms of my business's functionality and ability. Then the final thing in terms of our aspirations, especially where you've got different key stakeholders, people who have an interest in the success of the venture, it's about agreeing the priorities for the money. Now, let's just say that the people who own this kitchens business happen to be a husband and wife team. If each of them has a different priority for the money, but they don't articulate that clearly up front at the visioning stage, you can imagine that there's going to be trouble the first time somebody needs to make a quick decision about what to do with some money. So if let's say that the husband's priority in this case, and I'm cherry picking at random, is about volume. He wants to serve more and more customers, but the wife's priority is about quality, and she's saying it's very important that the quality of our food remains as high as possible. Those two sets of priorities will inevitably lead to differences at a later stage. So if they don't have the upfront discussions and set reasonable aspirations, set reasonable expectations for how they're going to be spending their money, what their priorities for spending their money are, you can imagine that there are going to be significant problems down the line. So in order to set reasonable aspirations for your project, set a clear vision for what you're going to do in a year to 2 years' time, decide what things that means you need to change, work out how much it's going to cost to change and what the value that those changes add to your organization, and use that information to set some priorities, and also talk more broadly about priorities in terms of people's hopes and feelings and aspirations for the transformation. I think that's probably enough on that one. If we can move on to the next slide, Debbie.
Yeah, no, that's a great lot of information on that. Thank you. So we're going to look at now poor planning and control. So how do you think Meals to Dine For? Because, you know, they've got limited budget, they've got limited time to be able to get this on. So, you know, they're obviously as the owner of Meals to Dine For, they're going to be a bit worried that time slip, sometimes projects slip. So, you know, how would you think, you know, give us some advice on about planning and control and how they can manage that effectively?
So the most important thing when it comes to planning and control of a project is about setting the level of detail that you need. And when we come to the wrap up at the end, one of my biggest learning points for people around planning and control is to decide exactly the level of detail that you feel you need, and do that and no more. Because one of two things tends to happen in planning a project. Let's say somebody invests in going on a Prince2 program. Prince2 is a project management system. It's a methodology, and then they bring up their and Debbie, I don't know if it's not too much of a pain. Could you bring up that Prince2 tube map diagram that I showed you?
Okay, yeah, I'll just see if I can get that. I'll yeah, bear with me a minute.
So just while Debbie sorts that out, this is just a nice illustrator of something where you if you go on a project management training course, often they'll give you materials that are freely available, like this one, where it tells you all of the things you need to do to keep your project safe and secure as you run it. And when you look at it for the first time, you go, oh my God, look, this is horrendous. Look at the amount of detail. I don't know, is it... I'm
having a problem being able to load it. It's not...
not to worry.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to do it.
I'll carry on. Oh, yeah, I can see. Oh, I can see me.
Can I? Oh, there we go. Can you see it now?
Yeah. So I don't know whether you can all see that reasonably well or not, but it looks horrific, doesn't it? All those different things. But actually, what that is, goodness.
Sorry.
Yeah. Don't worry. So as you look at it, it's actually a series of checklists. But if you didn't know the order, and if you hadn't managed 15, 20 projects before, trying to disinter what the right things to do are from materials like that could be next to impossible. Anyway, that's all I wanted to bring out. So what you really need is a series of simple checklists and pieces that allow you to understand how to deliver the important thing, how to look at the different important things at the right time. So when it comes to, oh, we're on this previous page.
Sorry, apologies. Yeah,
no worries. That's the one. So when it comes to defining a reasonable plan, I would say set out the things that you need to do, group them into buckets of tasks, and put the information about how long each of those sensibly takes next to it. As long as and if you're going the whole hog, what you might do is put the person who's most important to that task next to it. Now, this is something you can do in an Excel spreadsheet. You can get tools like Microsoft Project that can make it easy, though if you try to add all of the fields in Microsoft Project, you can spend more time project planning than you do actually working on the project. So a simple list of tasks of the things you're going to do, and it can be quite daunting up front to work out how much time to spend on each element of that. I think the best thing to do is put down the detail that you know, make estimates, and then resolve to keep returning to that as you go and as you experience changes. So let's say there are 5 things to plan. Write those 5 buckets, write roughly how long each of them is going to take and who's important to it. And underneath each one, then break it down into 3 or 5 more things that, and go through in that way until you've got enough detail to roughly say, what are we going to be doing each week of our project? So that I think is probably a rule of thumb that can help you to be doing a good project plan.
Would you have anything else to add if they're getting external people in to be able to build that kitchen for them? Is there anything else, because it's a bit more out of their control then, isn't it?
Absolutely. So the really important things where you're bringing in resource is that can be very high price, and also they have specific time windows that they're available for. So if you haven't worked out within your plan when you're going to need people, you could find that in a kitchen context, the guy turns up to fit your sinks the day before they're delivered. Now you've got to pay for that time. You've completely wasted that time, and there's nothing that person can do but sit and wait for the sink to be delivered. That's the sort of thing that you're trying to kick out through your planning process. So in the early days, when you're sitting down and drawing up the plan, it's just about trying to have an idea about what resources are you going to need when, as you're coming in. Balancing time, cost, and quality. Now, what I mean by that, when you're doing a project, when you're delivering a project, things you can either work to doing it as fast as possible, or as cheap as possible, or to the highest quality possible, or some combination of those things. What you can't do is get it done the fastest for the cheapest at the best quality. And unfortunately, when people set out to deliver projects, they always expect it to go to the time that they've said, at the cost that they've said to the quality that they've said. And if they're shooting for the stars on all three of those dimensions, it doesn't happen. So what I'm kind of highlighting here is when you're managing your project, so it's gone beyond the planning and you're now into the execution, what are you going to compromise first? Have clear in your mind, is the launch day the most important thing? Is the budget the most important thing? Or is the end quality the most important thing? And only allow yourself to choose one of those. Now, when you're coming to choose, you're going to want to pick a balance, but work out which in your head is the most important thing. Now, when it comes to controlling your project, use that information. Okay, I simply must keep to cost because we have a £60,000 budget and there's no more money. In this case, so cost is probably their most important thing. So if we have to have a suboptimal solution and then in a year's time improve the quality of that sink or the quality of that cooker, then we do that. But right now, we've got that money. That's our only thing. And if it needs to take a couple of days longer in order to not waste that money, if we need to apologise to the person who is going to be fitting the cooker a week out that the delivery schedule has changed, I need you on this day instead, and they say, oh, well, I'm not available until this day. Well, you're going to have to wait because your budget is your budget. You can't afford to do anything around that. So it's understanding those different drivers as you manage your project. And then finally, reporting and controlling structures. How often are you going to look at your budgets? How often are you going to look at the plan? Who are you going to be talking to about the plan? Who are the different people who need to provide information to you? Consider all of those sorts of things and try to put together, I would say, a simple reporting template that allows you to look at what did you intend to achieve this week? What did you actually achieve this week? What were the problems? What are the things that need managing? And what are we going to achieve next week on the basis of that information? If you've covered those things off, that's a pretty nice report to understand. That's probably enough on planning control for now, unless there are any questions coming in on it.
No, well, we don't have any questions at the moment. So yeah, you must obviously completely fulfilling everybody's expectations. That's fantastic. Okay, so we'll have a look at lack of flexibility or responsiveness. So how would that fit in with our meals to dine for then, and what do they need to think about?
Okay, so let's give an example here. Meals to Dine For at the moment is looking at a plan of expansion. So they're deciding that in the next year or 2 years, they're going to be servicing significantly more customers in a wider area. Now, what would happen if Meals to Love opens up down the road?
Ooh.
Do they, so they've now got a competitor who's going to be working into their space. Now, this is a situation that's going to happen on almost every project. Something external will change. And what they need to do is an appraisal of, does this now mean we need to be finished quicker than we were intending to? And we're going to need to go and try and get a bank loan for the increased cost of doing that. Does that mean that we need to retarget for a different level of quality? We've got to blow them out of the water on quality, so we're going to have to take the time and spend more money in order to make sure we protect our market share by being the best. Or do we need to just say, okay, we're not going to have as many more customers as we thought. Maybe we don't need this new kitchen at all, and make the brave decision of, okay, we've spent £10,000, but we're not going to waste another £50,000 opening a kitchen that we're not going to be able to use properly.
Actually, that's a good point.
To make, aren't they?
That it is. I mean, that's a good point, because I think a lot of businesses actually find once they start that investment, it's hard to pull back when things change, and they need to make a different option.
And as heartbreaking as it is, sometimes it's the right thing to do. And so keeping your eyes up and watching what's going on outside is important. But it's not just outside. What if the kitchen manager serves notice? Well, now you're in a situation where the person who is advising you on how to set up your new kitchen is gone. Do you continue to do it as a non-expert? Do you pay for expertise to come in and advise you on how to do it? If you're recruiting the new person, do you say, okay, well, we'll muddle through and then we'll recruit them afterwards, or would they potentially want to input to how the new kitchen is set up? So changing circumstances from the inside and outside, you've got to keep aware of, and you've got to think through, how does this impact my wider project? Is it still the right thing to do? Another thing might be so being flexible, but only where there's a valid business case. Okay, what if your new kitchen manager comes in and says, hey, I can't believe you're going with that mixer. We've got to go with the X mixer, because if I don't have that, I can't work with I can't hit the volumes that you're going to need. These ones are going to break down and be out of date within a year. Why are you going with those? Now, if you find yourself in that situation, falling back on what the business case for making the change is also important. Because often people come in with new ideas, they tell you that they're the most important thing in the world, and you're faced with a situation where you go, okay, well, you're the expert, and you just go with it. But unless and until that person can prove to you that there is an important and valid business case for what they're doing, don't accept it. So some projects are not flexible enough. Others are too flexible and end up approving lots of changes that don't actually add enough to the business case of what people of what they're going to get out of the project. I think that probably covers some points on flexibility. Should we move on to the next slide?
Yes. Okay. So we got failures of engagement, accountability, and adoption.
Now,
this is a really big area, isn't it?
Yeah, I've left this to last because it's huge. This is the thing that feels to most managers like it's the fluffy stuff, but actually it's the stuff that kills more projects than anything else. So don't dismiss people problems as fluffy. Talking to the right people at the right time is what makes a project succeed or fail. Now, and who's important to projects, and when are they important? I would say the first thing is, in your 2B vision, in your vision of what your kitchen is going to be like afterwards, who's important in that? Obviously your managers. So if you were to start a project to build a new kitchen without having the conversation with the current kitchen manager as to whether he or she is going to be managing that kitchen in the new world, are they going to get the new kitchen, or are they going to keep the old kitchen? Are you going to recruit somebody in? Are they going to manage both kitchens and have junior managers underneath them? If you haven't talked to that person, what you set up is a situation where they don't feel valued. They expect that they're not going to get it. They fear the worst, and that kind of dwells on their mind, and they might not even tell you, but that might worry them so much that they start looking for a job. They start looking for a job elsewhere, and you lose that kitchen manager in the middle of your transformation initiative. Now, that sort of thing happens all the time. So I would say stakeholder management, putting together a map of all the people who are going to care about the results and working out when are they going to care, and trying to talk to them before they come to their own conclusions, is absolutely critical in terms of getting your transformation to work. And as fluffy as it feels, people matter. So you've got to get this stuff right. Another element is getting strong support from senior stakeholders like that kitchen manager can help in terms of making sure all the other people who work in their team feel positive about the change. So in organizational terms, if you haven't got that person on board and spouting how wonderful this new change and this new world is going to be, everybody's going to assume that it could be worse. It could be more difficult. It could mean longer hours. It could mean less flexibility on holidays. It could be that there are going to be new people who muck things up, or we could have to work in a new way with new equipment that you don't understand and you don't want to go through training, and this sort of, it's going to be terrible. And this sort of mood happens on every single transformation of every scale and size. The biggest ones get this wrong all the time. You see situations where people across the organization feel like there are two teams involved in it. One is the changers, the people who get consulted, and the other is the changed, the people who are lumped with the end result. And the divide between the us and them is what kills most projects. So getting the senior stakeholders understanding why the change has got to happen, what their roles will be in the future, and allowing them to participate in it is a good way of striking a balance between consulting everybody and therefore never getting anything done, and consulting too few people and losing people's will and inspiration for the program. Finally, sorry, was there something you wanted to jump in with?
I was just going to say, you've got a program, haven't you? That's your Beyond Resilient. We'll have a look a bit more on that in a bit, but you know, you're certainly dealing with helping stakeholders to be able to manage the change effectively, aren't you? You've got a good program on that.
I mean, this is something that I have handled so many times over the years. I've come in and rescued projects with £50 million budgets and 250 people working on just the transformation alone. And you always find that the first thing you need to get right is making sure all of the directors, all of the senior managers who are going to be involved in the future of the organization are lined up behind the change, because if they're not, it will be going wrong in the background. And it's a mistake that is always made. So I've created a new methodology, which we've called Beyond Resilient. It's not just about being resilient to change, it's about being able to thrive on change that helps companies that are able to do that. And we'll talk a bit more about that at the end. So I'll just come to the final point on here, keeping people who will use the new processes and systems involved and excited. You've got a lot of people working in your kitchen. If all of them are fearing for their jobs, or if they're worried about the training they're going to have to do, they're worried about the changes, what you're going to find is the quality of their work today suffers, and the willingness to adopt the solutions that you bring in progressively become more resistant to the change that's coming. So it's really important throughout to make sure that the messages that are going out to your organization are consistent and clear, are in language that they understand, and help them to become involved and excited in the project. So another element of my Beyond Resilient system is about creating innovation action groups through your organization. This is a clever little idea that just has the people who are going to work within a new structure talking about the things that are important to it and feeding that advice in to the team that are making the changes. If you can get that sort of system working nicely, you find that everybody is excited about the changes that are coming because they've advised on what's important on it. They've been listened to, and I've created a nice little system to help with that. But you know, it's the sort of thing that anybody could do with a bit of good thought. How are you going to get your employees involved in helping you to set the priorities for what's the most annoying thing about the kitchen at the moment? Oh, this machine never works properly, or this always, you know, we always find that we get 50 of the plates to this stage and then we have to throw them away because this isn't ready. You know, finding those things, your employees will know those kind of root problems, and if you can fix those first, as what we would call in project management terms quick wins within your change program, and you fix them both in the old kitchen as well as the new kitchen, then you'll suddenly find that people are excited by, oh, this is making a difference, this is making my life easier and better, and I told you it would, so I can feel the pride in this transformation too. So that's the last thing to bring out on that slide. So this is quite a wordy slide. Yeah, so this is quite a wordy slide, and the reason is I'm going to read each one of them because these are the things that you've got to remember. So make sure every senior person, and that's defined as someone who will remain important to the organisation after the change, has had a chance to participate in setting the vision and then leads the project from the front. If they're not shouting about why this is a good thing, you're in for trouble. Secondly, determine how much detail is required in planning and reporting, and always try to have exactly that much detail, no more, no less. Often you find that there are organisations who hide things in too much detail. They write huge reports knowing that nobody will have time to read them. I've seen so many different organisations where all of the content that was in the report was fluff, and they used to keep old detail in there, you know, as a sort of log of changes. And no, you just need to know, are you on track? What things are slipping? Why is that slipping? What can we do to prevent those things? And what are we going to target next week on the basis of the information we've got? Number 3, interrogate reality. Keep your eyes up as well as down. Always keep looking at the business cases. Does it appear like we might have put the wrong numbers in? For example, if your business case states that you're going to make money by selling at a certain price, and it costs this much to do that, but you start getting information that actually you've missed a big cost element and that it costs more than it makes. If you've had a project that's going to triple the amount you sell of that, you've actually tripled a loss rather than tripled a profit. So keep looking at your business cases in light of information that comes up, and keep looking at your business cases in light of changes that happen in the outside world. Check why you're doing each project and keep that in your mind, and don't be afraid to stop the project or change it if necessary in light of the information that comes up. It's heartbreaking if you have to do it, but it's much better than wasting 60,000 instead of the 10 you've already spent. And then finally, try to get everyone involved from beginning to end, deciding what to do, shaping it and sharing it. If you can get all of the people within your organization excited and invested in the change, you'll make sure that that is successful and that the results of what you produce are enduring. So that's my top tips for managing a successful project. If anyone's got any questions, then very happy to take those. Or Debbie, if you've got any questions or thoughts.
No, I think you've covered that perfectly, and I think you know, definitely for the audience as well, because we've got no chat questions coming through at the moment, so that's fantastic. So I think that's you know, it's been really enlightening, really interesting, Rob. So you know, thank you for your top tips.
Pleasure.
And just to sort of finish off, we're getting to the stage we want to just check. Has this webinar given you a better understanding how to ensure your project is successful? So have you got new ideas, greater clarity? You know, is there things that you might now think about and consider that you wouldn't have done before? I think, you know, we've had an awful lot of information and really great stuff that's come out of today's webinar. And it's really useful for us to know whether or not that's given you some really great ideas and considerations that you wouldn't have had. So brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. Fabulous. Okay, as we start to think about wrapping up now, we've got some really, really great offers for you. So thank you for participating as part of the webinar today. Now, for me, I certainly have an understanding of the value of investment appraisal is really, really key to transformation. Now, I've got a quick guide that I've put together. It's something, my background is, I'm a chartered management accountant and I'm a qualified business analyst. So from my investment appraisal point of view, I've used this in the past. You know, it's looking at different techniques that you need to consider to make sure that that project is right for you. And this is just the financial aspects. And these are really key because projects can cost an awful lot of money, and you need to make sure that you're getting the right investment on appraisal back on that project that you're doing.
I'd second that, Debbie. I think trying to work out how to get good estimates is something that people get wrong time and time again. I think trying to choose the level of the estimates that you whether something is directionally right, and then gradually improving those is absolutely critical. You see so many projects started on the basis of, oh, well, maybe it's 10% less than that. And that's all that they do. And they then don't follow up to say, okay, well, what are the costs per transaction? What are the this, that, and the other that go into it? So having a bit of a guide to work out how to make estimates, how to appraise what return you're going to get from different ways of investing your money is really important. So I'd definitely grab that guide.
Thank you, Rob. It's also, you might have a couple of projects. You might have your £60,000 that you're thinking of investing. But what happens if you have two ideas? Which project do you invest in first? So, that covers that as well. So, and then Rob has got a fantastic offer as well. So, Rob, do you want to take us through what you're able to offer?
Sure. So what we're doing at the moment, my company, Beyond Resilient, we have a program that helps people with problem solving and vision setting. And typically we have, when we've been running this in the past, it's been run on an in-person basis, and we've charged multiple £100s. The weekend version of the course is £700 per person. But what we've recently decided to do, on some feedback that Debbie gave me, was to create a webinar version of the course, a 7 webinar series of the course that we're going to put together, where we essentially take you through the content of that £700 program, but we can do that for £30 a person. Now, in order to do that, because of the time for the facilitator who runs the webinars, we do need to make sure there's a certain amount of minimum numbers. But what I'm going to do is, if you can express an interest by, if that's something that could be useful to you, and really what this is about is about how to make sure you're doing the right program, how to make sure everybody is involved and contributes to it, and how to get all of your organization inspired and involved within that change. This essentially moves you from being in the 70% of projects that fail to having a very good chance of being in the 30% that succeed. This is the thing that makes the difference. So if you're interested in hearing a bit more about how to do that, my email address is there on the screen, rob@beyondresilient.com. If you can express an interest in that £30 version of the course, I will reply to you and let you know when we've hit the minimum numbers and what the date options are, and we can run that course together.
I mean, that's fantastic value. With £30 is absolutely nothing to gain a huge amount of information. And to be honest, £700 for a weekend, that's incredible value. I've seen courses much more expensive than that. Yeah. So, you're getting an absolute bargain there for £30. So I definitely advise you to email Rob and book yourself on that as soon as you can. Fabulous.
So just to give you a kind of a horror metric, when for large private companies of the size and scale of the Microsofts and Tesco's and Unilevers and so on, to do this sort of exercise would probably cost somewhere more like £20,000 to £30,000. So for 30 quid, you're getting a pretty good bargain of all of the best and most important information. And obviously, I'm happy to talk through with you some of the specifics of the problems on those webinars, and try to make sure it's as helpful as possible to each of you.
Fab. Okay, so would you like to give us a little bit more about your business, Rob, in terms of the types of things that you offer and what you found from working with large corporations and doing their transformational change projects?
Sure. So I've touted my stat here, and this is a stat that has been calculated by bigger, smarter companies than most people ever get to work for. I have faith in it. Most of the time, you set up a transformation, you get it wrong. And the reason you get it wrong is because the structures that you put in place to help guide your change actually promote change resistance. Setting up a team of people who are dedicated to delivering the change and excluding others because they have to get on with day-to-day business creates a situation where there are changes and changed. And those two people naturally bump up against each other, and it causes the people who are being changed to feel change resistance to the solution. So if you want to change that, you need to put active control of the transformation agenda back in the hands of the people who do that business as usual day-to-day work. And in specific, that comes at two levels. That comes at the managers, the directors who are going to be leading the organization in the future, making sure that they are invested in the change. They have specified why it's important, and they feel that they want to be part of that organization that's going to be there in a year's time, is absolutely critical. And then the second level is about the staff. It's about the people who are going to adopt the solution, adopt the transformed company and work within it. If they're not engaged along the way, if they're not participating in groups that help you to set priorities, help you to determine what quick wins would be, then you simply don't, you find that they ignore the solution, they delay, they start union actions, they start to get dissatisfied, they leave the company. It's a tremendously dangerous thing to get wrong, and it's the bit, because it's people problems, that everybody in the past have just dismissed as fluffy. And as the most practical, pragmatic guy on the block, I wanted to be the one that said, okay, I'm going to make people problems pragmatic. I'm going to show how we're going to get these things changed. And what I do is two things. We do a transformation black belt program for senior managers. We get their mindset on how they can help and support delivering the change, how they can contribute to that vision, and how they can become invested and ready to be accountable for the change that's coming. And secondly, we do a facilitated innovation action system where we help you to engage your staff in delivering a series of recommendations that come out of their own experience and their own lives working within the company that help you to drive what the quick wins should be for how what the projects and transformation you're undertaking needs to change. And that gets them involved, that gets them excited, and that means that you're much more likely to deliver a successful transformation. So that's what we do at Beyond Resilient.
Fabulous. So yeah, take a look at Rob's website, beyondresilient.com, and have a look. There's some fantastic stuff there, and of course have a look at mine too. I've got some great new online coaching programs, and I've got some coaching course, I've got some downloadable resources, and I've got a series of webinars that I've got coming up. It's all about supporting you within your organization. And there are two types of herds. There's a supportive herd of organizations that are willing to support and help each other and coaching and that type of thing. And then there's the herd of them in the market that you're working in, and you want to be herd leader of the market that you're working in. And by doing some of the coaching and learning those skills yourself so you can implement them over and over within your organization, you will become a herd leader. You'll become more creative in the way you work rather than knee-jerking. And that's a fantastic position to be in. People will want to do business with you, and everything you do will create value and will be at the best possible cost that you can make it. So, there's an absolute win-win for everybody by you keeping the way you're operating and your processes tight and effective, and that keeps the cost down. It means your customers are getting your product or service as quickly as possible. Therefore, they'll be really happy and your reputation will increase. So it's an all-in win. So I really hope to look forward to seeing you in the future. And we've got some great webinars. Check out the website. I'm on Facebook as well. So why follow the herd on Facebook, and catch me on Twitter. It's why follow herd on Twitter. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be around for the next minute or so just to answer any further questions. Thanks then.